What's up, Thriving fam? Welcome back to the podcast. Today is a very exciting episode. We have a very, very special guest, my husband, Sindri. Today is our anniversary, August 29th. So I figured what better way to celebrate than by having him on the podcast. It actually ended up being a really great episode. We really covered a wide range of topics from his struggles with social anxiety when he was younger and really his relationship to personal growth and how he kind of just took his life into his own hands and turned everything around to now where he is a very confident, charismatic person. He's very self-motivated. What it took for him to leave his toxic relationship and kind of both of our perspectives on what it took for us to go from the toxic relationships that we were in before into obviously this very healthy one. Also, if you know him, he is like literally one of the happiest people I know. He is just so chill and happy all the time. I mean, I've literally don't know if I've ever seen this man stressed in my life. He's just always got such a great perspective. Run into a problem, he just like brushes it off. He's ready to move on and not in like an unhealthy way. Like he just genuinely is unbothered. And apparently he's always been that way. So we talked about how even when he was going through, kind of all these challenges, as a kid or as a teen, he still was able to stay pretty happy and actually keep a pretty great perspective. And we kind of talked about his secrets to, maintaining happiness kind of despite whatever is going on in your life and whatever's going on in the external, which I think will be really valuable perspective for a lot of people listening. We told the story of our wedding and how we actually almost had to cancel the entire wedding, or we actually did have to like cancel the entire wedding, like basically reschedule it and change all of our plans last minute, like literally last minute, like on the phone with someone about to go to the airport and being like, no, don't come last minute. And that whole wild ride of actually getting married. We talked, of course, about our relationship, some things that you guys may not realize about us behind the scenes, and of course, all of our advice and tips and tricks for keeping a happy, healthy relationship, especially with long distance, and just our perspective on long distance in general, and why it actually might not be as difficult as a lot of people think that it is. Or think that it might be. And a bunch more that I don't remember. But it was a very fun episode. I had a lot of fun. I'm honored to have him as my first podcast guest and very proud to be his wife and have him as my husband. And obviously he's just my best friend, so I'm really excited for you guys to get to know him more. All right, so without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Sindri. Hi, I'm John Marie, and welcome to the Thriving Podcast. I'm your host and intuitive coach, dedicated to amplifying your intuition, transforming your mind, and igniting your inner magic to create a life you're obsessed with. 2 years ago, I was burnt out as fuck in a toxic relationship and a successful tech career that I just wasn't happy in anymore. I left it all behind with no plan, and now I'm running my own business, immersed in purpose and passion, happily married to my soulmate, and living out my dreams every single day. And if you're badass enough to be listening to this podcast, then you're already on the fast track to doing the same, babe. On this podcast, we'll dive into all things life, business, heart, mind, body, and soul, empowering you to up-level your life and embody your happiest, healthiest, and hottest self. It's time to make idealistic your new realistic, because you're not just here to survive, you're here to thrive. Okay, we're live.
Yay.
This is so weird. Okay, this is like, I'm a little nervous too because you're technically my first guest on the podcast.
Oh, big responsibility.
Yeah. And like,
No, I'm extra nervous.
well, no, no, not for you, but like for me, because I'm used to just talking to myself, but I'm not used to like having someone else and like asking them questions or like having,
interviewing.
yeah, although I don't think it's going to be like an interview. It's going to more just be like us talking, but I have questions from people.
Okay.
We look really so cute in this though.
We are very cute.
Okay, so anyway, hi. Now, so this is the weird thing. I have to talk to them and also you, you know? Like, I'm like, do I start just talking to you or do I talk to them?
Double the work.
I like find it funny how nervous I feel. I'm like getting hot. All right. How do I normally start these? Hi, fam. Welcome back to the podcast. Happy Thriving Thursday. So, as you know, if you have been following along, I've been teasing for a little bit. Today, we have the one and only Sindri. Can I say your full name?
Sindri Andersson.
Yeah.
Sindri.
I was going to say it with a much more embarrassing American accent, aka my perfect, amazing husband, love my life, my best friend in the whole wide world. And he's coming on the podcast today in celebration of our 1 year anniversary, or our first anniversary, technically. I think it's like kind of like if you say 1 year anniversary, I feel like it's kind of redundant because isn't year like implied in the word anniversary?
Oh, right.
So it's like,
I never thought about that.
yeah, I feel like because my mom, she like puts those kind of word things in my brain. So like,
I feel like people still just say 1 year anniversary.
they definitely
or 2
say
years.
it, but I think first anniversary is more technically like correct.
Right. Yeah.
It's the same as like she would always complain about when people say, you know, like if there's a movie like Annie, I don't know why that's the example that's coming to my mind, and then like they made a sequel like Annie 2, and then people start calling Annie Annie 1, and it's like, no, that's
Right.
just Annie.
Well, that sounds dumb.
Yeah, those really aren't related, but
Yeah.
it makes me think of it. Anyway, our first anniversary is tomorrow, Thursday, August 29th. We got married exactly a year ago. Actually, we should tell that story. Okay, this is actually a good time to like acknowledge this because, well, first of all, I've never actually told the story of like what happened with our wedding because we never like announced really that like we got married. So like our anniversary was actually supposed to be August. I looked at this the other day on my calendar.
22nd?
22nd or 21st.
Yeah.
And long story short, so oh my God, how do I even make that story short? We never announced really like that we got married, and then I kind of just like started calling him my husband because it was like we had to get married on like a shorter timeline because as you guys know, like we're waiting for Sindri's green card approval so that he can move to the US. So in order to submit that form to get that, we had to be married first. So we kind of were like, okay, we'll get married, kind of like a paper wedding, so we can submit that. And then we've always planned a bigger celebration later down the line where we do more of the whole shebang. Not huge still, because neither of us are really fully into that, like going like super big, but like a bigger thing where we can invite all of our friends and family and everything like that. So that was what this wedding was that we did a year ago. But then we didn't want it to be like nothing. Like we didn't want to just be like nothing because it was still special. And it was like, well, this is still technically like truly the beginning of our marriage and like our union and everything, like our life as husband and wife together. So we wanted to still be a little special. So we basically just planned this like little park wedding and just kept it very low key. And it was just like my family, because it was in Buffalo, and we had like one of our best friends officiate it, who has been there the whole way along our relationship. And it was really cute and cozy. And we did like a little mini, just like honeymoon overnight in Niagara Falls, because you guys know I live in Buffalo. So that was like very close. My mom got us a little surprise staycation for a couple nights. And yeah, my mom actually is the one that ended up making it like way more special, because she's the one that she ordered a photographer as a surprise, and she did the whole brunch for us after. But so we did just basically a small, cute, intimate ceremony. It was really, really sweet. Like,
Yeah, honestly, wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
yeah, honestly, it was perfect. And I'm really glad we had that. Not that I still don't want to do something else, because I do want to be able to like celebrate with everyone. But yeah, it was like perfect, honestly, for that, because
Yeah, it was just so personal. It's so just about the two of us, because it was such a small thing. You didn't have to stress about anything except doing something for us.
Yeah, no, I feel like we wouldn't have been that stressed anyway, though.
No, probably not.
But it was nice. It was just so small. It was just for us. Yeah, it was very intimate. It was really just like about our love, literally. Like, so it was really cute. Anyway, so basically our planning got kind of messed up with that. And we ended up having to do like a trip. We were in Iceland, then we had to come back to Buffalo to do the ceremony. And I looked up like multiple times before we left, like, what do we need to get married, to get the marriage certificate and all that. And I just like, this is actually weird because I'm a great Googler normally, but it's because it was all just a part of the plan. But like, Googling is actually one of my many skills. I mean, I was a software developer for like 6 years. Like, that's one of their primary strengths, is like, you're a really good Googler if you're a computer engineer. But I like, just every time I Googled, I just did like a quick little search. And I think I was maybe searching like requirements for marriage certificate in New York instead of like in Buffalo or something. I was getting to the wrong page, and it basically, or I read it wrong or something, which that is something else I am known for, misreading things. And
even on Google.
Yeah, even on Google. Yeah, I definitely, like, I've always been like notoriously bad at reading directions and things like that. But essentially, I thought we didn't need anything other than like his passport. And then get to literally fast forward the Friday before. So yeah, we were supposed to get married on like the Monday, which was like August 21st or 22nd. And the Friday before we were going to get the marriage certificate, yes, we were waiting till the last minute because it's me. And because like we didn't honestly have that much time because we had just gotten back from Iceland. So we were like,
yeah, right. We were just traveling.
Yeah.
We didn't really have any time to think about it either.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to try to not like also dominate this whole thing and tell the whole story. So like feel free to like, I'm going to try and remember to stop and like let you talk, but also like feel free to chime in whenever you want to.
Yeah, you got it. It's your podcast.
What was I saying? Oh yeah. So we were going that Friday to get the marriage certificate. And like right before we were leaving, I just like pulled up Google one last time to like confirm like what we needed. And this time, I guess because I knew like where we were going, like we were about to do it, I typed like requirements for Buffalo and I came up with like the Buffalo City Hall or whatever. And it was like, you need birth certificate. And I was like, wait, what? Wait, what? I'm sorry, we don't have a birth certificate. And then I like kept Googling. I was looking at different places and looking about stuff, and like everything is saying like you need a birth certificate, you need a birth certificate, you need a birth certificate. And you were, I think I was like in the kitchen and you were in the bathroom, like we're about to walk out the door, and you came back and I just like looked at you and I was like, you probably don't even remember. I don't even remember what I said. I was like so scared to tell you. It was like, I fucked up. But thankfully you weren't mad about it because you're always so chill.
No, I don't really get mad. I just immediately start thinking of solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, you're very solution focused, even more than me.
Yeah, so this was a little bit tricky because my birth certificate, I didn't even own a copy of it, and we had to get it. And we had to get it from Iceland to here within like what, 2 days.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. Because we were gonna go get it, and that same day we were going for the pedicures.
Yeah. And we called like the office or whatever, and
we called like different.
Asked them whether we can get them just like the PDF like electronically, and they did not want that. They wanted printed out in paper the old school way. So there was. Yeah,
they were like low-key kind of annoying about it. I feel like anything where you're like working with like the government offices and stuff, they're so like particular about it. Like, and we were like, we could give you like this proof, or what if it had like, you know, the seal or a letter signed from the agency or whatever, like digital. They're like, nothing digital. We need the printed certificate. And yeah, like Sindri said, like he didn't even have, because that's weird. I don't think it's that way in America, but like, because I think in America, at least, I mean, I think this is normal. This is how mine is. Like, you take the birth certificate home and then you just, like, have it forever. Because you need it as proof for a lot of things. Maybe that's why. Because, like, you need it as proof for a lot of things like this. But maybe in Iceland, it's not that way.
I have never needed it.
Yeah. Well, you don't even have, like, social security numbers or anything. Like, because that's another thing. Is like, my 2 documents I always have in my, like, safe place are, like, my birth certificate and my social security card. Right. So I think it's just, like, different here. You don't have the same like need to like have those available for things.
I don't even care.
They're a lot more chill about identity in Iceland.
I don't even carry ID.
Yeah, you don't.
Yeah, so I think in Iceland you return the birth certificate and then you can just request a copy whenever.
Yeah, but why even bother returning it?
They want to keep it.
You know what? I'm surprised that we didn't get more questions about like Iceland. I would think that people would have questions for you about, like, what it's like to live here, or, like, just stuff about being Icelandic.
Like who? What do you mean?
And, like, I asked people if they had questions for the podcast. And, like, we got, like, mostly questions about our relationship. But, like, I feel like people aren't realizing, like, they're basically, like, sleeping on the opportunity to ask you specifically questions on certain things. Like, I feel like I can think of so many good questions to ask you. Like, I'm going to have you back on the pod just to do an actual interview. But anyway, yeah, so we needed to get his birth certificate. And so, yeah, like Sindri said, we were basically calling every single, like, city hall or, like, town hall within, like, an hour or 2, like, driving distance to see if they would accept anything other than a physical birth certificate. We were like, we'll just have to drive there. And it was also, like, getting into the afternoon, and it was Friday. And we had to get it Friday because you actually have to get the marriage certificate, at least in New York, at least 24 hours before the wedding. And they're obviously closed on Saturday, Sunday, and the wedding was supposed to be Monday. So we're literally down to the wire. And everyone was saying no. So we're, like, pulling into the parking lot to get pedicures with my mom and my sister to prepare for the wedding. And we were all getting pedicures. Sindri was even getting a pedicure. You loved your pedicure, didn't you?
Yeah. I enjoyed that.
You missed the polish when it came off.
Yeah, well, I just liked laying back and having it put on
Yeah.
and getting like a feet massage.
The
foot massage.
relaxation.
Yeah, but the color was fun too.
Yeah, well, you just got a tan. So it just was
no
like
difference.
basically prettier toenail colors. Like,
Yeah, I felt very pretty.
But yeah, so we're like pulling in like on the phone with the last agency, and they said like no. And so we like walk in. And I was like freaking out a little bit. I was a little stressed. But the main reason I was stressed was like, and I like knew it was going to be fine, but it was just because there were many urgent decisions that needed to be made. And if there's one thing I don't like, I don't like being rushed, especially like on decisions like that. And I think if like it wasn't such a like time crunch with that, it would have been less stressful. Although I still think we handled it very well.
Oh yeah. No, that was a really stressful situation. I mean, I felt it too. And there was also just like so many people that were relying on
Exactly.
this. Like, people had to travel into town. It was like, if it was just us or me, like, I don't care about inconveniencing me, but
right.
But like affecting so many other people's plans, like it just makes me feel bad.
That's exactly, yeah, I think that's exactly it. It wasn't even like that the decisions had to be made urgently. It was like they had to be made urgently, like because they were affecting other people. And yeah, I was stressed about like inconveniencing the other people. So like I said, like our friend Micah was flying in to officiate the wedding, and she was literally like about to leave for the airport. Like on her way to the airport as we like get into the nail salon. And so we're having to decide right there, like, okay, is it, because we're also simultaneously researching how do we even get the birth certificate? Like, can we even get it before you leave America? Like, are we going to be able to get married like on this trip? You know, like how long does it take to request it? How do you even request it? And he's like looking up how to request it online. Of course, Iceland is like 4 or 5 hours ahead of our time zone in New York. So their offices were like closed. So he wasn't even able to request it that day. So we couldn't even talk to anyone and actually know the timeline that it would take to get the birth certificate. I feel like I'm reliving this right now. I'm like feeling the energy in my body right now. Like
I forgot about this.
I know. It was like a wild ride. At least we helped kind of like this was happening while we were getting pedicures. So that's probably helping to balance our energy a bit. Like yeah, so we didn't even know, and we're basically like, and like my mom and my sister are there, and they're like, everyone's like trying to spit out solutions and like do 1,000 different things, and I'm like texting Micah, like, I don't know if you should go to the airport, like I don't want you to like fly all the way here and then have to go back, and then like not be able to come back next weekend if when we actually need you, you know, and like calling her, and like so ended up like basically we ended up having to just like fully accept like, okay, like there's literally just no way we're getting married on Monday. So like tell her not to come. My dad was coming in from out of town too. He ended up still coming and just coming both the weekends. We ended up having a fun weekend. That's the weekend we did the mini golf and everything.
Oh yeah.
So
that was fun.
Yeah.
Can't believe you still came.
I know. Well, yeah, that's my dad. Yeah. And so it was like a very stressful hot minute. But yeah, this is like such a beautiful lesson too. Like once we just accepted you know, because I think that's why I felt torn, because I was still trying to be like, but is it still possible to make it work this Monday? And I don't know why I felt attached to that Monday. I think it was mainly just because we had already planned it around that Monday. And like, I had already like did my whole work schedule. Like I had moved calls around so we could do the honeymoon. And I had like already taken off the days at like my server job and at the studio to make sure that like I was free for those days. And then it was just like, oh, that feels like it was all a waste, because now, you know, like I have this time off and I'm going to have to now clear these days in the next week. And it just felt like, and also I was being a little bit like, I was like, 29 is like an uglier number. It's like an uglier number to have for your anniversary.
Still, when you've chosen a date and you're like, just gotten used to that being the date, it's really hard to like change it.
Yeah, it was just like mentally, in my head. I think it was 8/22.
Psychologically.
Now that I think it, because I feel like
22?
That date feels right to me. Yeah, but
it's a nice number.
I like 22, and I like the double 2. But yeah,
now I'm regretting it.
Ultimately, I knew it wasn't that big of a deal, and I am really glad that we both are so chill, and also like so chill just about like the wedding stuff in general. Like, and we were saying like, thank God this is for like such a small thing that we're actually able to like rearrange this stuff. Like, you know, Micah is able to thankfully she didn't already get on the flight, you know, and she was able to switch her flight with like a little bit of a fee, but not too bad of a fee, and come the next weekend and still come. And like, you know, we didn't have hundreds of guests that were like, if this had happened, this easily, if we had like planned a bigger thing, this easily still could have happened. Yeah. And we could have, you know, and that was the other thing, because we were like, well, what if we just still have the ceremony and just do the thing after? And apparently there was some like law that you like can't have the ceremony until you have the certificate, which like,
right? No, that surprised me too.
Yeah, I don't know how they really would have fact checked that. I mean, I guess Micah would have had to like lie on her officiant paper or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just like, we were like, no, we don't want that. It's not going to feel whatever. I guess technically it's illegal.
Yeah. There was still a lot of uncertainty because we had to order the birth certificate from Iceland, have it shipped all the way to Buffalo, and shipping to the United States from Iceland can take a couple of days, and we needed it within like what 5 or 6 days. It had to be in the country. So we really were still putting a lot of faith in the change date that we would have the documents by then, because the shipping would have to be basically perfect. We shipped it priority, and they said it would come within 4 or 5 days. Yeah, and then it came within 4, I think. Yeah, but if it went to any wrong location or anything went wrong in the shipping, then we wouldn't have been able to do it. So that was a really good lesson, and also just like trust. Yeah. Trusting that it's going to come. We told everybody to come on the next date, and we truly believed it was going to happen, that nothing was going to go wrong. And that could have been like, we could have been thinking about that the whole week, like, what if the document doesn't come? What if it doesn't come? What if it doesn't come? Just like stressing about it the entire time. So true. I think a lot of people would. Yeah. But I feel like we were just chill the whole time. We're like, it's going to come. No, yeah. It's going to ship on time.
You're so right. Because it really was. It was like the stress was just like now it's not how we planned it and we have to change things. And then once we changed it, we made the new plan. We were like chill. We were like, yeah, it's happening. Like we really weren't worried it wasn't going to come. We were basically like, there's no other option. It's definitely coming. Like, so I think that was almost like to like a reward. Like it ended up working out as perfect. Like basically the rest of it, when it like, we actually went through everything, like ended up working out perfectly. And I feel like that was like our reward for like how we like handled everything going wrong. It was like, okay, now everything's going to be so smooth. Cause that was another thing I forgot too, was another, like we had to change the honeymoon reservations. Like, or the like mini honeymoon, like the hotel reservations, we had to change that, and that could only be certain days. So yeah, like you said, the timeline was super strict when we redid it, because it was like, yeah, he had to request a birth certificate, which is going to take like a day. And then his dad had to like go get the birth certificate and like priority mail it here to the US, which was going to take, whatever it said, like 4 to 5 days. And then we also had to get the birth certificate at least like a day before, or like at least a day or two before the wedding, because again, we had to then take that to get the marriage certificate at least 24 hours before the ceremony. Yeah, right. So it was like very, very tight. So yeah, I think.
And you never know with those, because I once sent you a letter.
Yeah.
A love letter. And it took I think it took over a month for it to get to you.
Yeah, it took.
So you never know when you ship something to the US, whether it's going to come on time or not. They said it would come in a week, and then a month had passed. I wanted to keep it a surprise, and I was like, did you get a love letter yet?
Yeah.
I just started because I didn't know if you got it yet.
Yeah, that happened too when I sent you that letter, and it took like so long, and then when it arrived to you, the envelope was like dirty. Yeah. It was like, this letter's gone through it.
Yeah, right?
So yeah, basically that was the story of our wedding. And yeah, it was like crazy, but we ended up, basically just figuring that out with the birth certificate. And then we were able to change Micah's flight. My dad still came the next weekend, and my mom was able to like change the honeymoon reservation. We ended up actually having to change one thing. Like we were supposed to be at one hotel for 2 nights, and then we had to actually do a different hotel for the second night or for the first night or something like that. Yeah, but that ended up being really nice, because I think it was like the one that we ended up adding on. We had like that really pretty like view of the falls or something. And then like that was the night of like the supermoon, blue moon. That was last year. And so we got really pretty pictures, and we were like walking down the falls in our like wedding outfits, and like everyone was saying congratulations, and it was really cute. So yeah, it ended up all working out, and that story I feel like is like such a perfect representation of so many things of like us and like also just of like what like I talk about, like you said, just like such a lesson in like trust and acceptance. And I was thinking that the whole time, like I was like, all right, this is something better, this is something better. Like I know that this is because like for some reason.
And it ended up being so perfect. Like,
yeah, it literally could not have been more perfect, the actual wedding and honeymoon and everything. So anyway, that is the story of our first wedding. And that is why our anniversary is tomorrow. And that is why Sindri's on the podcast to celebrate the anniversary. I also just wanted to have him on, and the timing just ended up working out perfectly, like it always does for us. I feel like that's honestly a thing with us, is like the timing just always works. Like things just work out perfectly when we're together. And I always say that because I'm like, I feel like when we're together, like things are just so good and aligned, and we're in like such a high frequency that just like life just feels like we just flow through life. Like things work out. It's like we have lucky girl syndrome, like amplified. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, definitely.
You're so cute. What was I saying that? Oh yeah, because I was saying that I wanted to have you on the podcast regardless because I thought it would be fun. And then it just worked out perfectly that this episode is going to literally come out on the day of our anniversary.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that happens to be a Thursday.
Yeah, like couldn't be more perfect. Okay, so how do you feel to be on the podcast, by the way?
Oh, I love it. I'm a big fan.
You're a big fan?
Yeah.
Big thriving fan?
Yeah, I listen every Thursday at the gym.
You do. You're a little bit behind, though.
Yeah, well, not for long.
How did you feel when I first asked you to be on the podcast?
I mean, I don't really feel like I'm podcast kind of personality. I'm not like a big social media guy either. I always find it kind of funny when you are like taking videos of me for your Instagram and stuff. So like I don't really. It was like, remember during Christmas when you had me do like camera stuff, open the calendar, and I was like doing everything wrong, like pointing the camera down on my feet, or shaking camera, having the camera be really shaky, and people can barely understand my accent. It's like, but yeah, I'm still definitely excited, and it's a new experience. I like to go out of my comfort zone. I like to try new things.
Yeah, you definitely do.
Yeah, so
it's so funny that you say that though, because like I think it's so funny, you know, the assumptions we make about ourselves. Like I'm not a podcast person, or I'm not really a social media, whatever. Like literally when I post you on social media, like everybody loves it. And that's funny because that's almost what makes you so good at like being entertaining and being authentic, like on social media or on a podcast, like being interesting, because you're not like,
like not really trying.
Yeah, you're like literally just being so yourself, and you are so naturally funny too, and like interesting to talk to. But like I remember literally people responding to those stories and being like, we want like more Sindri, like content. Yeah. Or like I think it was like Ashley was like, she loved the kind of dynamic of like me trying to like show you how to like do it to the camera. Like she was like, we need a series of like Sindri learns to be an influencer.
True, that was a little bit funny.
Yeah.
And you were like, what are you doing?
And you said you love to go outside of your comfort zone. So that's a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask you, we do have a couple questions from people, but I have a question of my own. Is you can either kind of just like tell a little bit of like your story of like your relationship with personal growth and self-improvement, or just like how you look at it or the experiences you've had with it, because I feel like you have a really good story of discovering like those things and really kind of like turning yourself and turning your life around and like transforming yourself. And now you are like so into it, like just as much as I am, pretty much. Like you're very focused on your health, and you're really good with your habits and like setting goals and accomplishing them and everything like that. And I just feel like it's a good story to share. And everyone knows my story, so you can just say whatever feels relevant on that topic.
About personal growth? Yeah,
if you could like be like, just tell a little bit about like where you were and then where you got to when you started like exploring those concepts, you know, or like what was most powerful to you to implement.
Yeah, so growing up, I was very, very shy and socially anxious. Also not in a very good like physical shape. Didn't really think about my personal health very much, and it's just a lot to go through.
Well, okay, so that's kind of the before. So what do you feel like sparked like your motivation to really start to like take things into your own hands and like turn things around?
Yeah, I think just like maturing and growing up. I just figured out like I really need to improve my life, and I can't just be socially anxious the rest of my life. Because like when you have social anxiety, it's just like leaving the house becomes difficult, or like any kind of normal things, going to the store or going to school, because like you're always dealing with people. I just realized I can't live my life like that in like constant fear. And so like I started taking public speaking classes in school. Like if there was an optional class about public speaking or what, I would take that. And I got books on public speaking and improving your confidence and things like that, and started running, working out, and like eating better. The first biggest change was cutting out all like sodas and only drinking water. It was just like small incremental changes. Like every single time I made a change, it would motivate me to change some more, because I could see the effects and I could feel the effects. And like the more confident I got, the better I got at public speaking, the more I realized like how possible it was. But it really was like my whole life's been such a gradual, slow step up. It really, I mean, I'm still dealing with a lot of these issues today that I was dealing when I was 14 years old, but it's still like every single year I feel like I get a little bit better.
And you wouldn't really know it from looking at you. Like, you present very confident, like very motivated. Like even Cole the other day, he was like, "No, Sindri's got that entrepreneurial spirit."
Yeah,
like, Sindri's like so like, and to me too.
Yeah, it still surprises me very much when I hear stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I guess it is working.
I know.
Because I still feel like I always have that perception of myself just from those past stories that I don't think people see me as being confident or social. I still never feel very super likable, because I don't think I was. And then when people do seem to like me and do like compliment me on those stuff and do seem to think that I'm confident, I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess I am. But it's hard to like accept that for yourself when you've thought another thing about yourself for so long.
It's almost like that it's just that identity work, like of you can do all the things and like make all the changes like externally, but if you don't do the identity work and make the changes internally to like your own perception of yourself, it's not going to like really change how you feel until you start to build enough votes in the external that it actually starts to like change that internal perception. And it definitely does work, like you said. Like you start to like see it enough and you stick with it for enough times. It's like that I always say from Atomic Habits, every action you are casting a vote for that new identity and like that new perception of yourself. And every time someone says something like that to you, it's casting a vote. So it definitely works, and you're like living, walking proof of that. But at the same time, I feel like what you're saying is also showing like how if you don't integrate it fully internally, you're going to like run into that internal conflict more of like, am I? Like that's where almost like more of like the imposter syndrome and stuff comes from.
Yeah, it's just all mental.
I was going to ask.
It's definitely something that pretty much I think everybody can. Because I mean, at my worst, I was basically just like, I would sit in a corner, not look anyone, not try to get eye contact with anyone. Just never, I would spend the whole week, didn't talk to a single person. And I loved that. I was like, please don't talk to me. I don't want anybody to talk to me, because I might say something embarrassing or like I won't be interesting or whatever. I thought I was just doing people a favor by not talking to me. But
yeah, you're doing the opposite.
Yeah, like today.
You're very charismatic today. You're like very good at starting conversations and asking people questions.
Yeah, and I have no fear about it. I don't have those same thoughts that would keep coming to me, where it's like, what if they think XYZ about me? Or sometimes I would take like an hour just to leave the house because I was like adjusting the headphones. I was like, I don't want them to look like this. This looks silly or whatever. Like I don't care what I look like.
Yeah.
Just like all those things that I would used to care about. And I mean, I guess this comes with age too.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think like you said, some of it comes with just like maturing and growing up.
Yeah, but it's like, I think it's something everybody can work on. And I feel like, I mean, if I could do it, then pretty much anyone can.
You're so inspiring. No, I feel like you're like that's why I wanted to ask, like, have you kind of tell your story, because I feel like you're just such a good example of like, you literally just decided, like, I'm going to turn it around, and you just did with like small, consistent efforts and changes over time, which is like what I always say. Like, people always want like a quick fix or like a big thing. And it's like, if you just commit to like the improvement and commit to like the goal and stay consistent with the changes that you're making, like, you will see change. And that's exactly what you did. And I think it's also just like, it's so impressive, especially to me, that you just did it basically all on your own. Like, I've gone on obviously this huge journey, but I've like gone to therapy and I've had multiple coaches and like done, like, I've taken a lot of support, and you basically just like did it yourself. And you didn't, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you didn't like, I feel like even though I had all that support, like, I like struggled more on the journey than you, like, or like, I don't know, maybe you just make it sound easy. But I feel like you were just kind of like, almost like, I'm doing this and I'm doing it. And then you did it, you know, which is, I feel like you're always very much that way. At least since I've known you, is you're like, I'm going to do this, and then you do it.
Well, I mean, kind of, but kind of not, because it's been such a roller coaster throughout my whole life, where I would make some improvement and then I would go back down.
Yeah.
And then again, I would make some improvement. And I mean, it was very much back and forth, especially with like my motivation and with my fitness. And I mean, even with my social anxiety and all of that. But I'm also just like a very, very, very happy person.
Yeah.
So through it all, I've always been very positive. I've never been sad or depressed or been down on myself. I've always felt like this is just how I am, and worked on it. It's not necessarily a positive that I've only done it on my own. That's also just from the anxiety, or like I didn't want to get help. So most of the things I did was just like looking up solutions, like Googling and reading books. And I mean, I did figure it out all myself, which I think is impressive, but it's usually better to get help.
Yeah. Well, no, I
from other people.
I think that's a really good, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I forgot about, like, I know we've talked about this before, but I think that's like the difference. Cause I was like Googling a bunch of stuff too, trying to figure it out on my own. But I feel like the difference, like you said, like, you were still like generally pretty happy through it all. Like, you were like, yeah, like, I'm working on this. Even like when you said when you were super anxious and you felt like super lonely, you didn't have friends, you didn't talk to people, like, you weren't like depressed at all. Like, you were still like a happy person. And I feel like that's just goes to show like how powerful those like core beliefs are. And like, because I feel like the difference is why it felt like so much more of a struggle to me is because I had so many more things. Like, I had like such a plummeted sense of self-worth for like such a long time, and I was like tying so many things to that. And I feel like you had a very like solid foundation of like your sense of self-worth and like self-love, honestly, like your love for yourself. Like, so you never like really slip into like shaming yourself and stuff like that, which is like, shame is like the worst pretty much like emotion and reaction that I've dealt with a ton, that I think is the reason why my journey felt so much harder than probably was for you. So I think that's a really good point of like why it was different.
Yeah, I feel like I always just realized like my brain is just this way. It's not me.
Yeah.
It's just something that I'm dealing with. And as long as I keep working on it, it will get better. And I kept seeing gradual improvements. And that was enough to make me happy. I feel like a lot of people want those big changes or aren't satisfied unless, and I don't feel like they're making any kind of progress if they're just making small incremental improvements. But I was happy with that. Like in school, I would do really badly. And if I got like just barely a passing grade, then I was super happy. I was like, this is better than I normally do.
Yeah, that's a gift. Like, you were just kind of born with that ability to separate it and to like always have like really good perspective. Yeah. Like, that came pretty naturally to you. I wanted to ask, do you feel like there was one moment that felt like a turning point where you were like, okay, like, this is enough. I have to turn things around. I can't be like this for the rest of my life. Or did you just kind of like have the awareness and kind of slowly just decided to start kind of like taking a class here and there and like going from there?
No, the awareness was always there. The biggest changes always happened when I changed environments. So when I went to a new school, or when I moved to a new country, or got a new job, because just entering a new environment gave me a new sense of confidence, because it was kind of like I had a blank slate. Like people there didn't know me, so I felt like then I could act a little bit more confident, or yeah, just had a bit more motivation, because it felt like more of a clean slate. Then I felt like I could change myself without feeling weird, because like, why is he acting differently suddenly? So those were usually like the biggest pushes forward.
Yeah.
For me, just changing environments. But otherwise, I was always working on it.
Yeah. Changing environment is such a huge hack for that.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes back to the identity perception too. You're like, well, my identity in this environment is like one thing. But if I go to this new environment, like you said, it's a blank slate. And then you don't have that like ego, like attachment to like, well, I'm supposed to be perceived this way, or I'm supposed to present this way. I actually talked about that in like one of my episodes about if you're trying to like break out of funk, basically. I was like, just go to a new environment and like break all the attachments you have to like those settings, those situations, those people, and who you think you need to be in those places.
Yeah, I don't think I would be nearly as far as I am not right now if I didn't move from Iceland to Austria for a couple of years. It was just such a huge change in environment.
Yeah.
And I just had to put myself forward so much, and I had to be a lot more confident.
Yeah.
So that really just like boosted my everything so much.
Totally. And then do you feel like it was the same thing when you moved back from Austria to Iceland?
Yeah, just not as much, because at that point I had already built so much.
Yeah, you kind of were like...
So much of a better foundation than what I had when I moved there for the first time.
Yeah, totally. What do you feel like is the biggest thing holding people back from making those changes and committing to those kind of changes that they don't realize is holding them back, like from your own experience? Or like what do you, looking back now, you're able to say like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that was actually like holding me back so much more than I realized?
Trying to figure out, because I felt like what was holding me back was just my own thoughts, just like being scared. And I felt like what always kept holding me back was just like scared of looking dumb, or scared of people judging me. Like I find it hard to speak for anyone else, but for me, I think it was just to start not caring about what other people think, or like just not realizing that I am thinking about it so much, and that nobody really cares about me, and nobody's really thinking about me. So I mean, maybe that applies to a lot of other people too, that they're constantly in their own head about what other people are thinking. So for me, the more I stopped worrying about other people and just thought about being myself, then the more progress I really made.
Yeah, so you feel like it was just really just like gaining that self-awareness over time?
Yeah, just like realizing that like other people's opinion doesn't really matter. I know what it's really thinking about it. Like, I guess just like stop taking myself so seriously. Like that the world isn't that serious, and there's no reason to have an ego.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that the root of most of my issues was just kind of selfish, or like thinking that people care about me more than they do.
No, that makes total sense. I've totally had that too. I'm like, oh my God. Like when you realize like, I'm really not that important. Like actually nobody cares. That was one of the first videos I made. Like when I started my like Instagram page, it was like, nobody gives a fuck. Like your life will get so much better when you realize literally nobody gives a fuck. The only thing that people give a fuck about is your happiness and well-being. And anything else, like they literally don't care. Like they only care if it's affecting your happiness, like in a negative way, truly. And if it seems like they care, it's not. It's just because they still think that everyone gives a fuck about them. Like, it's just like, it's like that book, like the subtle art of not giving a fuck or whatever. Like, I love that book. 'Cause it's basically that principle.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one too.
Last thing on this topic is I feel like you have like a very good, I know I even did the article, like I featured you in that article about it, like with habits. Like I feel like you have a very good relationship with habits and like setting healthy habits and sticking to healthy habits and breaking bad habits. Like I know you've had like bad habits that you've broken or changed. So is there anything Like, what would you say was your formula to success with like breaking bad habits and implementing healthier ones?
Well, first of all, it did take me really long time to get to the point where I am now. So I have had so many of the habits that I do very well right now have taken me like at least like 5 or 10 years to like get them consistent. And just like I'm mostly talking about like my gym habits there and eating habits. Like, I've had so many times where I had like month or two of eating well, and then I would have a couple of months eating really bad. Just like such a back and forth yo-yo with it.
Mm-hmm.
But
so what do you feel like stopped the yo-yo? Like that allowed you to fully, like how'd you fully kind of like get over the hump?
the biggest thing is always just like gonna be consistency. To like do it the same time every time.
Mm-hmm.
So like at least for me, with any kind of habit, I pick specific dates where I'm gonna do it at the same time, like right after work or after eating dinner, right before bed, or whatever it is. I don't really know if there's any specific thing that made me. I feel like it just started clicking.
Yeah.
From small incremental improvements.
It just all like came together over time.
Yeah.
Basically.
Like just like the more I got my life in order, the more it started clicking.
Yeah, I feel like the more you started doing things for yourself and started just like prioritizing yourself more like over anything else.
Yeah.
Like you just were making yourself more and more of a focus in your life like over time, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. Probably like with my habits, probably the biggest change was when I left my toxic relationship. Because that's, I feel like, when I could finally focus on myself, and there was nothing external that I felt like was constantly holding me back. So yeah, I think once I cleared all external factors that were like bad decisions or like were not the right decisions for me, that's when I could like fully focus just on my own habits or on myself.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes perfect sense. Because I feel like it was kind of the same for me. Like when I tell my story, I'm like, once I like finally filtered out all of the like things that weren't in alignment, and like same for me, like once I left the toxic relationship that was burning me out, and I left the job that was burning me out, and like I stripped all that stuff away, then I was like, okay, now I feel like I can like be me and prioritize me and like go all in on me. Because that's really like your energy is just so diverted, and then you're really able to put your energy like into the right buckets like first.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest thing for me.
All right, that's a great transition because we actually got a question about toxic relationships. And the question was, what changed within you to be able to leave your toxic relationship and get into a healthy one? And she said she would love to hear both of our perspectives on it. So, and I was like, that's perfect because we both were in a toxic relationship and then got into a healthy one, obviously, this one that we're in. So I know you were just talking for a bit, so you want me to answer first? Yeah. So I'll give a short answer because I feel like I've already talked about this quite a bit because I've told my whole story and everything. But really, what changed? I mean, to be able to leave, like if I take myself back to when I was still in it, it was just like it got to like the last straw. You know, it was like almost like a rock bottom. Like it got to a point where I was just like, I'm better than this. You know, like you kind of, that point is different for everybody, especially depending on where you're at in your life. And, you know, like right now, like my point for that would be a lot higher. Like my standards are a lot higher than that I hold myself in my relationships to than they were back then. But I got to that point, no matter how low it was, where I was like, I'm better than this. Like I'm not putting up with this anymore. And like basically I'm choosing me. And I chose me, which was leaving the relationship. And I think that is really the key. Like if I were to boil it down to one like key point is like choose yourself. Like in any and every situation, like we just said, like starting to prioritize yourself and put yourself first. Once you start choosing yourself. So for me in that situation, I first chose myself by leaving the relationship. Then I kept choosing myself over and over. And that led to like meeting Sindri, or I already knew him, but getting with Sindri and figuring out my business and everything like that. And it can work in the other way also, I think. If you're in a relationship and you're maybe not at that point where you're ready to leave yet, how can I start choosing myself, like in other areas, in other ways? Like, where am I not choosing myself right now? And maybe that's just like doing more for yourself, right? Like more self-care or joining a dance class or hanging out more with friends, like following more of your passions. And I think just the more that you choose yourself, the more you shift into alignment. And again, like it becomes like the other things just naturally start to fall away. And so if you do that enough times, I think you get to a point where you're just like, you just feel it, like you get to that point more quickly almost of like, oh yeah, like this relationship is not for me anymore. I'm better than this because you've started choosing yourself in so many other ways. So I think it can go like either way, but I would say that was really like the biggest shift for me was I chose myself. And it was like after I chose myself at that low point, it was just like, all right, I'm never letting, now that I'm out of it, because when I was in it, it was like, I was so scared to get out of it. And I was like, now that I'm out of it, I'm never fucking letting myself go back there, So it was like almost like skyrocketed and you guys know, like I had like a string of like many different like situations and things like that. And that was kind of the final straw. But yeah, I think that was really just like that final shift to where I was like, all right, the next one that I get into is the one, like no more BS, like I'm not settling for any of this stuff anymore. And I feel like I've talked to a lot of friends where they've had the same thing. They're like, yeah, I went through all of these bad ones and then you just hit that one that's the final straw. I always say like, you're going to keep getting the lesson until you learn the lesson. So I think you really just have to make a decision. Like if you're somebody that's been getting into toxic relationship after toxic relationship or like relationships never work out, it's like, okay, what lesson haven't I integrated yet? Am I truly ready for like the healthy love that I claim that I want? Or is there a part of me that is still actually wanting to go into these bad relationships, that I feel like I'm getting safety from these in some way, or I feel like I deserve them or whatever it is. So I feel like when you're ready, you'll be ready, and you won't really be ready when you're not ready. I always say that, but yeah, choosing yourself will pretty much never steer you wrong.
Yeah,
Do you
definitely.
have anything to add?
Yeah, it was a very similar situation for me where I just started choosing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And also just like once my confidence was starting to build and I was starting to like think like every single day I can do so much better, and I'm holding my happiness back so much. Like just like starting to get that realization that I am just keeping myself in a situation that I'm not happy in. Once you just at that point where you just know,
Yeah.
you're thinking about it probably every single day.
Yeah.
And you keep thinking to yourself, like, why am I doing this? Like, why haven't I just ended it? Why haven't I just left? Worst, I remember there was a time where I like had decided, okay, today I'm just gonna do it. I'm just like, because we lived together, I bought a hotel room. I was just like ready to leave it that night, and then I just like, because it was a bad combo. I stayed for so long because I also have my anxiety issues on top of also being in a bad relationship. And I just remember I got filled with so much stress and anxiety. It's just like it like almost paralyzed me. I've never felt that kind of stress before, and I immediately just like unbooked the hotel. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it next week. Next week sounds better. I just remember I felt such relief like in my whole body as soon as I unbooked that hotel. It was like, yeah, it was like, even though I 100% knew it was the right decision, it's like my brain and my head was just like fighting against what it knew I had to do. Even though I 100% knew I was ready and I had everything within me to leave, at that point I just couldn't do it. And I remember when I finally left, I never told that before, but I had to be drunk to do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to build the self-confidence, or like to like not care and not think about it, to like tone down the stress.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird that I was at that point. Like I know now if I could easily make decision for myself, and I would never let anyone get me to that point again. But that's how it was for me. I couldn't. It's like my brain was always fighting against me. Yeah. Whenever I made that decision.
No, that's like so relatable in so many ways. And I love that we have like kind of like very different, like we had very different like not situations, but like the way that we like went through that was very different. And I almost feel like we represent both sides of, because I was like saying I chose myself like I need to choose myself. And then I started choosing myself more and more. And that's how I got to the healthy relationship. And like, I was like, but it could go the other way. And that's pretty much what it's for you. You're like, yeah, I had been choosing myself more and more and like getting healthier and healthier. And then I was like, basically built up my self-concept to where I was like, okay, I'm better than this. I have the strength to leave. But yeah, it's just that classic like intuition versus the fear and survival brain. That's like, you were just like experiencing the epitome of your brain was like, this is not safe to leave. We are going to die.
Yeah.
And that's why you felt so much stress. And it's interesting how you were like, I felt so much relief after. Because my mom has actually asked me this question. She's like, how can you tell the difference? Because like in a situation like that, you would feel so much relief. A lot of people could mistake that relief for thinking they're following their intuition, you know? But it's really like, it's like a trick. It's like relief in disguise. It's like you feel relief because you're out of the stress, but you're still out of alignment. Like you're still, how do you, because I know people struggle with this and I know how I would explain it, but I'm curious for you, like when you felt that relief, how did you still know like that the relief wasn't a sign that it was the right decision to unbook the hotel?
Because then I would immediately, like an hour or two later, I was like, that was silly. Why did I unbook that? Well, next week will be a lot easier. Now I've been through that experience. I know what to expect. And like I instantly just like decide, okay, next week I'm going to do it. And then any minor thing would then make me decide, okay, next week after that. It was just like always delaying it, even though I knew I had to do it.
Yeah.
Like it never made me doubt that the decision was the right one. It was just like, I kept saying the timing isn't right.
Yeah, so it's almost like the relief is driven by like a desire to delay instead of just by desire.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like if from like the intuition perspective, like that feeling of like relief and peace that you would have after following your intuition, then the desire is gone because you've aligned to the desire. So I'm trying to put this in a way for like people who have had this question to understand, because I know it can be a very confusing thing. So like what you're saying, I think, and I can even put this in the context of my other relationship is like, yeah, I had the same thing, because with that one, I was a lot more of the same of like, oh, I should end this, but like, no, I don't, I'm going to put it off and this and that.
Yeah.
And yeah, you feel relief like when you decide to not do like the hard thing, but then the desire is still there to do it. And I think that's how you know that the relief is like a trickster, because then once I actually broke up, like I felt relief because I wasn't in that I did the hard thing. And of course, I still felt stress. I think that's another thing that can be confusing, because like you might still feel stress and regret after you do the right thing, because that's still the fear talking to you, but you'll notice that like the desire isn't there anymore. Like you're not feeling that like urge, like that nudge, like you need to do this. And that's how like you know you've done the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's going to land for whoever is ready to receive it. But yeah, we could go a lot deeper into that. But I know it's kind of like a hard thing to really, and it's really like you have to really kind of just get to know like your own body. And that's why like honing your relationship with your intuition is so important, to be able to distinguish those things.
It reminds me a lot of this quote that I read yesterday, which was, if you can't beat the fear, then do it scared. Because that's like my whole life. It was, if I can't beat the fear, find whatever excuse I can to not do it.
Yeah.
Like that's what I would do. Like I would avoid public presentations. I would avoid talking to anybody because of my social anxiety. I would avoid. And then I knew it never grew, and my life never got better. And ever since I started just like doing things instead of avoiding, even if I was scared, just like let myself feel the fear, all these good things came to me. So for me, it's a big thing has been to like start accepting fear too. Just like
totally
let yourself be nervous. Like there's nothing wrong with being nervous.
Totally. The fear doesn't mean that it's like the wrong thing to do. And it's coming back. Like I love how you said, I won't continue to grow, because it's like, I think that's another great way to look at decisions is like, am I growing? Like which decision is helping me grow? You know, am I growing by staying in this relationship or by leaving it? Because we both know in our old relationships, we would have said, oh, I'm not growing in this relationship. Yeah. But in this relationship, I would totally say I'm growing by being in the relationship, you know? Definitely. So that's like another good way you can look at it. Really good perspective, babe.
Thank you.
I love you. And I also think it's, like so interesting how you're like, I had to be drunk to do it, because it's kind of like an example of where devices and things like that, like tools like that, can be actually positive, you know? Where like, of course, that would be like, well, you know that you could have also gotten through your stress by tapping and like breath work and all these like shaking it out, you know? But like at the same time, it's like, it's like kind of just like a fun perspective of like even this like evil, like terrible thing like alcohol that like has basically no benefit. Like, hey, in this situation, it was positive.
I hate that it had to come to that. But at that point, that was the only thing that finally relieved the stress enough for me to go through it, to like go through with the decision and like not unbook or not be like in paralyzing stress. But yeah, it's like you said, like it was a tool that I used at that time. I think today I wouldn't need to do that at all.
Yeah, and that's a thing. Like, and we were talking about this yesterday too. Like with different tools and things, is like the line between like when it's useful and when like you're not becoming too dependent on it. Like that was useful for you to overcome that challenge to get into this place where now, like you said, you wouldn't need that because you've been able to like free yourself and then focus even more on yourself and build your confidence even more. And it's the same things we were talking about, you know, like getting an astrology reading or seeing a psychic or something like that, or learning your human design. You guys know I've talked about this before, but there's a very fine line between like where those can be useful if you're at a certain place where just that extra bit of validation is like what you need to really move forward with something. But at the same time, if you're not careful, you can get dependent on that external validation, and those things actually you kind of end up skipping the lesson of learning to trust and learning to believe in yourself, because you start to actually rely on like those things and like point to those things to reference like, oh, I can do this because my human design, or I know this is going to happen because my astrology like reading said this, or this psychic told me this. So you know what I mean? I just feel like there's a very fine line, even like with any of those things, or like with something like alcohol, where it's like, it may serve you in a certain situation. In the majority of other situations, it may end up being like doing more harm than good. And again, I feel like that's with everything, pretty much everything in the world. You can like, it could be great in one situation, it could be bad in another. And that's why I'm so passionate about just like intuitive discernment and learning how to really know in your body, like when it's, you know, what's what, basically, because it can be so challenging sometimes, even for me, to try to explain, because it's like there's really technically no rule of thumb. It's just like, what is it for you? Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. So we left the toxic relationships. We got into an amazingly healthy, oh, hi baby, I love you. You're so cute. I love you. Amazing, healthy relationship. We got basically just a general question. Like, I know this is like the most popular question, so to like just generalize it into one question is like tips for a healthy, happy, long distance relationship. So I figured we could just kind of end out by like talking about what we think makes our relationship so healthy and why it's so good, and then we can talk about general and specific to long distance. Do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Well, I think the most important thing with this topic is to still treat it like a normal relationship. So like still go on dates, still talk every single day, and have video calls, like actually see each other. And this is something that we do this. We have date nights. We try to call each other every single night on video. And I also think that long distance relationships don't work for everybody. I think you do have to have a certain kind of, at least personally, I think you do have to have a certain kind of personality for it to work, because a lot of people do better in person and like feel like they need to see each other and really need that physical part. And even more importantly, a lot of people don't really like texting that much.
Yeah.
And I don't really see how a long distance relationship could work very well if you don't like texting.
At the same time, though, I don't know, because I feel like you could have a long distance relationship in many different ways. And the way that we do it is the way we do it, because is what works best with like our personalities, you know? So like, I feel like there are people who way prefer to call than text. And so we communicate very well because we are able to like text throughout the day, and then we like have a call at night usually. But there might be some people who, like, maybe both of them aren't big texters. They also might not be as, like, they might be fine with just, like, one phone call a day without that text. You know what I mean? Like, we're a little more, like, I want to talk to you as much as possible. But not everyone might be like that. So I feel like there might be some people who would be fine with just call, or maybe they like do quick calls throughout the day, or they send voice messages or something like that. I feel like people do it all different ways. So I feel, and even too, I'm the most neediest for physical touch person you'll ever meet, and I still like manage. So I feel like, yes, it might not be for everybody, but also at the same time, I feel like a lot of people like poo-poo it kind of and are like, oh, I could never do it. And it's like, well, maybe you could, and you just, you know, like, what is a way? It's like with everything, like I say with business, how can you do business your way? Like, how could you do long distance your way? What would you need to be able to do it? You know, it's obviously not ideal forever, and I wouldn't want to do it forever, but it's like the way that we make it work now is, like you said, first of all, like, we prioritize the relationship a lot. We prioritize date nights and making sure we call and stay in communication, and we text a lot.
Has to feel like a normal relationship.
Yeah.
Just do the same exact things that you would do in an in-person relationships.
Mm-hmm. And I think also, like, the way that we see each other, like, we do our trips, you know, like, we have these long extended trips, and like, for us, that helps not feel, you know what I mean? Like, first, that might be how it is for us. Like, we do, you know, kind of like a couple months apart and then a couple months together, you know, and then other people might do weekend trips or like you know what I mean? Like, they might do it a bunch of shorter trips instead of like spread out longer trips or things like that, or whatever it is. Of course, it depends on like your distance and everything like that. But yeah, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's yes. Right. And like, I think there's lots of different ways you can do it. Yeah. And again, like with everything, it's just kind of tuning into like, what do I need and what do I want?
Although I think one thing that is very important that I think applies to everybody is to have a plan.
Yes.
Because at some point, like as it gets more serious, you have to, I feel like, decide when the long distance is going to end and when you're going to transition into being together. Like, start working towards that place and have like a kind of a timeline
100%
in mind, so it doesn't feel like, okay, is this just going to go on forever, or having some kind of uncertainty around it. Like, you have to both like kind of decide how long it's going to be, or like have a plan, basically.
Yeah, no, 100%, I agree. And I think that's like the biggest thing, honestly, is like, and this is like, if you even look up, like, I used to look up like long distance relationships last, and like, how do you know it'll work, and all these things. And like, the number one piece of advice you will find is like, have an end date.
Yeah.
And know what's going to happen, because, and I ran into this too, like, if you don't know, like, all right, you're coming here, or I'm going there, or we're both going somewhere else together. Those are basically the only like three options. You know, if you can't really decide on that, then like, what is going to change that's going to help you? Just, you know, like, if you're both like, I really don't want to leave where I am, like, what's going to change then? You know, and I think you really want to have that figured out sooner rather than later. Like, even like when we met like in London, November 2022, and like on the flight back to Buffalo, like right after we met, and we were like, oh yeah, we'll just like try to meet and like take it slow and see where it goes. And I like basically was like, I want to know right off the bat, like, would you be willing to move to America ever? Or like, I was like, cause if not, I really don't, like, this is honestly, I don't want to even get any deeper, because it's just going to hurt when I realize that like neither of us want to move to the other place. But I think also we kind of like, we were like so in love that we were both kind of like, you know, if it came to that, I would, like, because I was even like, ideally, I would rather stay in America than move to Iceland. But I was like, but I really, really want to be with you. So like, if I had to, I would. And I was kind of thinking like, you know, I'll just be what's that word? Like by country? Like bi-coastal, but with countries. I was basically planning on I would like live half the time in Iceland and half in America. I was like, well, we'll make it work. I was like, we're going to like be rich and just have houses and my plan is still that, basically, to have houses in multiple countries and just be able to live wherever. But yeah, so I think like, and I know I didn't want to hear this back then, but it's like, if it's the right person, like, you'll make it work. And if it's not, you won't. Like, it sucks to hear, because, and the thing is too, like, it being the right person doesn't even necessarily have to mean like neither of you are willing to like make it, you know what I mean? Like, it's like how you can say like, you know, timing can be an incompatibility, you know, like even if you're totally compatible, like personality wise, and you're super in love, you know, if one person isn't in a place doesn't want the same things as that person at that time, that can still be an incompatibility. There's so many factors, but yeah, I totally agree. I think you have to have that end in sight, or you have to at least know. It's like, even if you don't have the date yet or whatever, like you have to at least have a plan and know what your next steps are, and know like when things are expected to happen, like know what's expected of each other, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And I think other than that, like, we just have really, really, really good communication. Honestly, I think that's like one of the biggest like things. And I think because we've both been through like a ton of other relationship experience, like we're at that point where we're just like, we know what we want, and we know, like, we're both very self-aware. So we're able to communicate well about our needs and about any problems or like things like that. And I feel like we listen very well to each other. And we always say we don't really fight, like, ever. Like, if we have a sensitive subject to talk about, or like we have a disagreement, we don't really often we're able to talk it out pretty well. And I think we're just very open to, like, we don't let things like build up sweep things under the rug, or let things build up. We're very open. And I think that's like huge. And I think I know it's talked about a lot, but I still feel like that's very underrated.
Yeah. That's probably like the most important relationship thing.
100%. And I think we're really good at that. And that's one reason why a relationship thrives, especially being long distance. Yeah. And I think another thing is we stay playful. Like, we keep it fun. We always keep it light. Even like we were saying with the wedding thing, we don't let ourselves get too stressed about things. And we also stay very grateful. We come back to gratitude a lot.
Yeah. That's a very important perspective, especially in long distance, to like, okay, it's not ideal, but there are still so many things to be grateful. Just like the fact that we are able to talk every single day, and that flying is really readily available. And I mean, we both speak the same language.
Right.
Like,
seriously, our time zone's only 4 hours or 5 hours. Like, could be 12.
There's always so much to be grateful, and it's so easy to just think about the negatives.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help.
No. And yeah, I feel like honestly, even just at the simplest level, like every time I come back to like, oh my God, but I'm so like grateful and lucky just to like have you, you know, and be with you. Like, how happy I am just to be able to talk to you every day. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I wish we could be together, but at the same time, like, this is just so amazing as is. So like, I love you. I think we're just really grateful. We're very open with each other, and we're very committed. We both put a lot of energy into the relationship. Like you said, we prioritize it a lot. And I think also like an important thing, if you're in long distance, like you're saying, treat it like a normal relationship, is like, yeah, just like really keep prioritizing it. Like, don't kind of let it start to feel like a chore. Let it kind of fall by the wayside, or like be like, oh, I have to fit this in, or like keep it at the forefront of your life, just as if like you were together in person. You know what I mean? That was something that we ran into a little bit, where it was like, okay, we need to prioritize time for each other, and not just be like, okay, well, I don't have any like IRL obligations in this time slot, so this is when we can hang out kind of thing. You know, like, we're having a date night this night, and like treat it just as if you were going out to dinner, like going somewhere in person, and don't kind of treat it like, you know, oh, that's optional because it's just a virtual thing. Yeah. With like all aspects of your relationship, prioritize everything as much as you would in person, really.
Yeah, there's still so much that you can do in long distance.
Like, yeah, and make it fun.
You can still eat dinner together. You can dress up and just eat on camera at home. Or you can watch movies or shows together. You just like go on camera, have your laptop out, count down 3 and press play at the same time, and watch all those things that you would do as a couple in a normal relationship, do them in long distance. There are all these tools today, and that's like key to making it feel normal and actually feel like a relationship. Because if you like barely see each other, you don't really go on dates, don't like do stuff together, it's just you're gonna feel so distant that you really gotta still do those, like the dressing up for dinner or whatever.
Totally.
It really helps make you feel normal, like
100%.
a relationship.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it's like, be like open-minded and like open to what is possible. Like, don't treat long distance like it's a limit, you know? And like, look at the positives too. Like we talk about all the time. There are positives of long distance, you know? We get that feeling of reuniting and counting down to seeing each other again. And like, we get to be more creative with things we do. And, you know, we actually like the texting relationship sometimes because like we send each other really cute good morning messages, and like we're together, we don't do the good morning messages as much, obviously, because we're like together. And so it's like there's positives to both. Each has like unique things about it. But I love what you said about like dressing up and like having dinner, because we even like literally went out on a dinner date, and I like requested a table that was like in the corner so I could put him up on FaceTime across the table from me. And we like went out to dinner together. And yeah, a lot of people would probably be like, I'm not doing that. That's dumb. That looks silly, you know? But for us, it was like, look, like we're going out to dinner. Like I get to be in the vibe of like the nice restaurant. Like we dressed up for it and we do stuff like that to be very intentional about, just like not feeling like we're missing out on anything, you know, obviously other than cuddles. But yeah, there's basically a lot that you can do in long distance that you probably feel like you can't do. So like, how can you get creative with it? Okay, that was all the questions, and we've gone pretty long. It's like almost an hour and a half. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome.
Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the Thriving fam?
Yeah, just keep thriving.
How did you like your first experience as a podcast guest?
Yeah, it was fun. I'm not used to talking so much.
I know, there's a lot of talking at once for you.
My vocal cords, they're not trained for this.
I love you.
It was a lot of fun. You're very good. Good host.
Thank you.
My favorite host, actually.
You're cute. Oh, I wanted to ask you one more thing before we go.
Okay.
What is one thing about me or like my business, that one thing that like my community wouldn't know from being, you know, like from listening to the podcast and watching my Instagram and everything? What is one thing that you feel like they should know that you feel like they might not know or realize like about me or about my business from the outside?
About you?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's tough. You're very open.
You feel like there's anything that you would like have behind the scenes that you're like, I feel like they don't realize this?
Probably maybe how sweet and affectionate you are. Even though, I mean, I was going to say silly too, but you definitely have a lot of silly videos.
Yeah.
But I don't think your Instagram shows your affection.
True. That's a good one.
As much, yeah.
Because
you are very, very, very sweet and affectionate and very needy for attention and hugs. And
I'm very needy for hugs.
Needy for PDA.
Yeah, that's
like
true. That is something that wouldn't really translate. I am like all over him all the time.
Hard to miss in real life.
It's hard to miss in real life, but that's what I was going for. Like, what's something that like if we were with them in real life, they might be surprised by? They wouldn't like know what to expect. Yeah, is that I'm like all over. I'm very huggy in general. I've always been like that with my friends and stuff too. Like I'm just like, I will be hugging and like touching whenever I can, basically. But yeah, obviously, especially with Sindri, it's amplified. That's a good one. I love you. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this almost hour and a half long episode. Hopefully once I cut it, it'll be down to about an hour. Thank you so much for listening, celebrating our anniversary episode with us. I love you. If you like the episode, then don't forget to share it out, leave it a like, a rate, a review, all the good stuff. DM me, let me know what you thought. Tell Sindri what a great job he did on his first podcast appearance. Have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are. Don't forget to stop and take a deep breath, smile, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Love you.